Welcome to the Roy Morgan Weekly Update. This week there's been a slight move back to the ALP after the Albanese government's strong stance on putting the CFMEU into administration. The bigger news though is inflation expectations fell significantly this week. Inflation expectations dropped 0.2% to 4.6%. This is the lowest level for nearly 3 years since November 2021. So the ANZ Roy Morgan Inflation Expectations Indicator shows Australians expect annual inflation to be 4.6% per annum over the next 2 years. This result came after last week's release of the official ABS monthly inflation figure for July that showed a decline in official inflation, down 0.3% to 3.5%. If this trend continues for another 2 months, inflation will finally be within the Reserve Bank's target range of 2 to 3% by September. The latest Roy Morgan survey shows the ALP on 50.5%, up 1%, just ahead of the Coalition on 49.5% on a two-party preferred basis. Although the major parties have again swapped positions, if a federal election were held now, the result would be too close to call. Either major party, the ALP or the Coalition, would need the support of minor parties and independents to form a minority government. This result once again highlights the continued importance of preference flows to determine the overall two-party preferred result. Primary voting support moved against the Coalition this week, down 3.5% to 36%, but the party still retains a lead over the ALP on 30.5%, even though that was up 1%. Importantly, more than a third of electors, 33.5%, say they'll support minor parties and independents. That's a higher result than the last election, when it was 31.7%. The big beneficiary this week was One Nation, up 2% to 6%, while the Greens were unchanged at 13%. Support for independents increased 0.5% to 9.5%, while support for other parties was unchanged at 5%. Government confidence, whether the people think the country's going in the right or the wrong direction, dropped to its lowest in 3 months. It was down 5.5 points to only 72.5, well below the neutral level of 100. Now, a clear majority, 57% of Australians, say the country's going in the wrong direction, and that's up 3.5%. Only 29.5% say the country's heading in the right direction. Consumer confidence, ANZ Roy Morgan consumer confidence was virtually unchanged at 83.1 this week and has been really stable since mid-July. This is the 7th week in a row consumer confidence has been above 80, and the measure has averaged 83.1 during this period, the same as its rating this week. However, despite this recent improvement, looking longer term, consumer confidence has now spent a record 83 weeks below the level of 85. Now to New Zealand. In New Zealand, both key indicators, government confidence and consumer confidence, increased in August to reach their highest levels for 6 months. Roy Morgan government confidence increased 7.5 points to 97.5 in August, and ANZ Roy Morgan New Zealand consumer confidence, the measure of consumers' economic sentiment, increased 4.3 points to 92.2. Importantly, there was good news on the economic front in August, with the Reserve Bank of New Zealand cutting interest rates for the first time since March 2020. Historically, cutting interest rates is one of the key factors that boosts government confidence and consumer confidence, and this was confirmed with the results for August. This move also provided a boost in support for the National-led government. The Roy Morgan poll shows an improvement for both major parties in August at the expense of the smaller parties. There was a good result for Prime Minister Christopher Luxon's National-led government, now with its biggest lead for 4 months. Support for National increased 3.5% to 36%, while support for the main opposition, Labor, increased 2.5% to 26.5%. a gap of 9.5. While support for the major parties is up 6%, an even greater share of electors, 37.5%, support one of the minor parties, including the Greens, ACT, New Zealand First and the Maori Party. Overall, now 53% of New Zealanders support Christopher Luxon's National-led government, including 36% support for National, 9.5% support for ACT and 7.5% for New Zealand First. 43% support the parliamentary opposition, including 26.5% for Labor, 13% for the Greens and 3.5% for the Maori Party. And that's a wrap. Thanks for your interest this week in Roy Morgan's latest results, and I'll be back next week to bring you the most up-to-date readings on consumer confidence, inflation expectations, business confidence and voting intention in Australia. Thanks for listening.